Hey guys, I'm Amy, and today we're going to talk about 7 rules for booth sellers. This video is more about a temporary booth that's someplace like a Christmas market or a craft fair or an art show, a holiday extravaganza, anything like that that you might have rented a booth in, that you're going to set up your things for sale and you're going to do it for a temporary amount of time and try to get as many sales as you can over that weekend or whatever the length of the show is. For more like permanent booths that are more like antique mall type situations, I do have some videos about that too. So check out my channel because there's some videos about that. And some of these things will apply to people who have a booth someplace else also. Stay tuned. I'm going to talk about 7 rules that you need to know. I'm also going to give you right up front 3 trends that I saw at this last market that I went to. And then stay tuned till the end because I've got a bonus for you that will really help you kind of put things in a nutshell to help you be effective when you're setting up a booth and trying to sell at a special show. Okay, so this past weekend, I live in the Dallas area and I went to a couple of shows which I have sold in before. I've sold at shows like this. I've also showed at more wholesale type shows, and I have some videos about that at the World Trade Center and around the country at wholesale markets. And if you're interested in any of those kinds of things, check out my channel. But today we're talking about some of the special holiday shows that I went to. And I just went as a buyer, as a shopper last weekend to the Chi Omega show in Dallas and also to the Vintage Market Days show in McKinney, which is north of Dallas. Right off the bat, I started to see some trends of things that are kind of coming forward in booth decor, and some great ideas that I wanted to share with you that I was seeing. Particularly, I saw these at Chi Omega. I didn't see them quite as much at Vintage Market Days, but I did see some of them. And so I wanted to share these 3 trends that I saw several places, and I'll give you some pictures for examples. I will talk about these later when I'm listing the rules, and also I'm going to show you more pictures with voiceover explaining the examples of what I'm talking about for everything. But the 3 trends right up front that I want you to take notice of are balloons, balloons, balloons. You know, now you can get these specialty balloon groupings with all these cool, beautiful colors and order something that is just a fabulous looking group, and it can be totally in your brand colors. It can be something that's so specific and pretty. And I saw a lot of people doing that, and that's why this is more like for temporary shows, not for something like an antique mall booth that you have all the time. But doing balloons to draw people's attention, to make it festive, to make something high up in your booth that draws the eye, and to also just reiterate your booth or brand colors is a really great idea for something you can order for a short-term show. Okay, trend number 2 was neon. And again, neon signs are something that we're starting to see that you can order a custom version of. You can go on Etsy, you can get a neon sign made with the name of your company. And these kinds of things, not only do they bring some light to your booth, they draw the eye, but they also hopefully are really going to be good at nailing your branding and getting you to stick in people's minds in the name of your shop or your store that you're having. Okay, tip number 3, this is a little bit smaller one, but tinsel. Any kind of tinsel. This was specifically for a holiday show, a Christmas show. And one thing I saw several times that was much more effective than I expected was like these tinsel curtains. This is very inexpensive. These long tinsel curtains along the back of your booth. They really actually do brighten it up in the same way that in home decor, putting in a mirror, you know, it reflects light and so it adds more light into the room. These tinsel curtains actually worked in that same way. They're inexpensive, they're festive, it feels like a holiday, it feels Christmassy, and it actually brightened the booths up a lot more than I expected. I saw that several times, so that's an inexpensive tip. If you're in a booth that has curtain, you know, rod and curtain walls, and you want to do something to just, you don't have enough money or time to do a whole new fabric to cover up the curtain wall that's there, but you want something to kind of make it more festive and brighter, then the tinsel curtains are kind of a good option. I was surprised. They looked better than I thought. So that leads us right into rule number 1. Rule number 1 of doing a temporary booth show is grab their attention. There are some ways to do this that I've seen over and over again. One of them is just having something above the booth level. If you're in a big, huge hall with a bunch of booths that are 8 feet high or whatever, if you have some of your merchandise up above the level of the booth, then people can see that from far away and go, oh, look at that coat, look at that, you know, whatever they have over there. Even if it's a decoration, look at that sleigh, that's a fun booth, and my eye is drawn to that. So anything above the booth level will stand out above the crowd of this sea of curtain rod booths. Number 2 is one of the trends which I mentioned up front, balloons. If you do a set of balloons or even just balloons you do yourself, that balloons immediately feel festive. And so it feels like a party, it feels like your booth is fun. They're inexpensive, they're easy to transport. You can leave them behind when you're done. They don't weigh anything, so they work well with the curtain and rod type of booth, but they immediately draw the eye in, make it feel like fun, make it feel like a celebration. So balloons are a great choice. I've got an example of something hanging from the ceiling, which is another great idea, depending on the venue and how hard it is to do. This takes a little extra work, but I actually went to see a booth of one of my viewers, and she had done this awesome job of hanging snowflakes from the ceiling. And it just made her booth special from rows away. You could see the snowflakes hanging down, and it was so much fun. And she went to the extra trouble of doing that. If you are able to come up with a plan of something like that, then that is really fun and magical, and that's a great idea, to be able to hang something down in an area where most people are not going to the extra work to do that. Rule number 2 is light it up. I've mentioned this in some of my other videos because it's so important. I'm going to mention it again. If you can bring additional lighting onto the scene, it is always helpful. They will have light at these places, they'll have various amounts of light, but anytime that you can light up more than what the light is just there generally given to everyone, your booth is brighter, so your booth automatically stands out and draws people's eye. That can just mean bringing extra lighting. I saw somebody who had brought these rows of fluorescent lights, which was kind of unusual, but it lit up their product really well. There are other things you can do, like the 2 tips I talked about up front, the 2 trends, having a neon sign or having tinsel curtains. Even that just reflects more light and makes your booth seem brighter. So extra light is always going to help draw the eye to your booth. Rule number 3 is know before you go. Anytime that you can shop a show before you ever become a vendor there, that's really going to help. You're going to have an understanding of the feel of it, how busy it is, what the booths tend to look like. That's just going to help you be more familiar. Very often that's not possible. You can't do that. That's okay. If you know anyone who's gone to one of those shows, call them, pick their brain. If you can find pictures of any of that stuff online, even watching videos like this where I show you clips from Chi Omega or Vintage Market Days or Flea Style or any of the other shows I've done. It's helpful just to kind of see what the crowd looks like, what the booths look like. Any information you can glean is going to be good before you go. But another thing that you need to try and find out, and they'll usually put out this type of information for you when you're signing up for the show, is, you know, what does the hall look like? How big is the place going to be? What is the backdrop? All this stuff will definitely be in your booth package. Is it going to be a hard wall booth, which is usually more expensive, but it's much nicer? Or is it going to be the like pipe and rod and curtain type booth, which most of them are? If it is a curtain type booth, then you really want to find out what color the curtains are. If the curtains are white or black, then you'll be okay to just leave the curtains there as your background and use, you know, your merchandise and things like that. It won't look bad. But some of these have like terrible looking curtains. I've had a lot of shows where the curtains were kind of like a bright royal blue. Not horrible, but it totally didn't go with my booth setup. I brought my own curtains as a backdrop. And I was talking to somebody who said they'd been at a show where they were red curtains all over because it was a holiday show. But I mean, that looked terrible with their merchandise. A lot of times, sometimes they'll have like blue, white, or something like that, where, you know, that's just what they have in that hall, but it's not conducive to you having a beautiful special booth layout set up. It may work when there's, you know, a show that's just a bunch of people talking about telecommunications or something. They don't care what their booth looks like, but you're trying to sell beautiful crafted things and you want your booth to look pretty. So knowing about the curtain and then figuring out a solution for how to cover up that curtain if it's going to look bad is going to be important to get your booth to look the way that you want. Like I said, if you have black or white, you're okay to go. I'll show some examples of Chi Omega. They had black curtains. It's not bad. But there was somebody there at that show who had changed out all the curtains to white. Their booth completely stood out because it was bright white, whereas everything else was black. So even if they have black or white curtains, if you go the opposite way, your booth will look different by contrast than the other booths. And what you're really trying to do is you're competing for eyes, you're competing for attention. So these kinds of things are important to remember. It's also helpful to know what the floor covering is going to be. At some shows, it's a big hall where the whole thing is carpeted and they never change the carpet. At some shows, it's a concrete hall. They lay out the carpet before the show starts. So sometimes they'll have carpet in every booth. Sometimes they'll have concrete everywhere and they never put out carpet. And some shows, they just lay out carpet in the aisles and your booth is still going to be bare concrete. And it's just important to know that depending on what look you're trying to create, if you need to bring some kind of a floor covering. And at Vintage Market Days, the floor is actually like this red-brown dirt. And that's important to know that. if you weren't expecting that, you'd be very surprised to have this dirt floor that could get on everything. And so it's good to make a plan for how you're going to keep your booth from getting dirt everywhere. And so it's really important to just read all those details in the packet about what it is you're getting, what's coming with your booth, what are they providing, and what are you needing to supply yourself. And you also need to make sure you sign up for electricity if it's not already provided, because you're going to have those extra lights or whatever. You need to do that in advance and make sure you're going to have electricity in your booth. But one important thing I want to talk about that you need to know before you go, this is still part of number 3, is the demographics of your buyers. I think it's really important that you bring a range of prices of objects that people can buy. So some high-end things that would be great, high dollar ticket items for you, but also some inexpensive things for people who like your work but just can't invest in that this time. That's a really good, entry-level purchase for someone who you can then nurture into a buyer of something more expensive. But know how much people are going to spend at these shows. And I was surprised when I was at the Chi Omega show to see some merchandise that was like the $300 to $400 merchandise, and they'd have multiple pieces of this item. And that's because this show traditionally is a place where some people come and will spend quite a bit of money and get all their Christmas presents and come to the preview sale on Wednesday night and things like that. And so people have learned from the buyer demographic that you can bring some higher end items, higher ticket prices than you probably would for a typical show, and have a pretty good chance of selling them. So just kind of know and try to bring a mix. Have a few that are higher, aspirational things you'd love to sell, and then have things that are kind of within the range of what you expect to be selling, because you never know. Somebody might surprise you and buy that high ticket item. Rule number 4 is go with the flow. I'm real big on thinking about traffic flow in your booth. It's important to be able to display everything you want to display in a pretty way, but if people can't get around in your booth, it gets all clogged up, or if people can't even get in there comfortably, remember that they are carrying shopping bags and stuff like that. If they can't get in there comfortably, they won't even come in and shop. And if they won't come in and shop, then no matter how great your stuff is, they're not going to buy very much of it. So traffic flow is really important. I've mentioned this in other videos. I won't go into it for a long time here, but there's just a great classic layout where you have all your things along the U shape of the booth, and then an island in the center that traffic can flow through. And if you have a single booth, it's a little harder to do that. It's very easy with a double wide booth to have that layout, so people can kind of come and go, and then you're going to check them out in a place where it doesn't make a log jam. You need to check out in a place where they can kind of stand out in the aisle or in the hallway without interrupting traffic flow. If you're in a single booth, it's a little harder to do that, but there are ways to do it even with a center island. Keep the island from being too big or too deep if you're going to do that. Otherwise, people will get stuck. And I have a couple of examples of booths that were just too full. They tried to do a rolling rack in the center, and it's just kind of too much stuff for people to get in there. And it's counterproductive if you have so much stuff that people can't even get in your booth and shop. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes less is more, even though that's hard. It's hard to do when you're at a show. Rule number 5 is be an explainer. And by that I mean really try and find the ways that you can have point of purchase explanations of what your product is. If you get busy at a show, you're not necessarily going to be able to sit there and explain how your product works or what the features and benefits are to every person who comes by. Sometimes you need the display to explain it for you. And so make sure you find good ways to let people know those things so that they can get interested in your product and understand why it's so great. I had somebody that I ended up buying from because they had put an iPad, they had mounted it, and it had a video showing, a short video showing how you could use their flannel cloths. If you rolled them up on a paper towel roll, you could use them as paper towels that then you would wash and reuse. And I love that idea, and I love that they had a video there that explained it with the iPad. It was very neat and concise. And I'll show you these girls. They're from Wiley, and the booth was great. So that led to a purchase from me because they had right there at the point of purchase or the point of display, they had an explanation for it. And another example of this viewer who had the snowflakes in her booth, she had some flyers out right there just explaining the story of these pumpkins, all these great pumpkins that she has made from vintage fabrics. And so that's something that draws the customer in. It makes them more interested in you and your story, and it's really great to have those things around to tell your story or to explain your product even when you're not able to do that with every single customer. Rule number 6 is stick in their memory. Be sticky. This is the term about, things that are sticky that stick with people. Your branding in your booth, it is important because what your goal is that even a person who buys from you is going to remember you and your shop and your name and not just the show they bought it at. If you don't have strong branding, it's very likely that they'll just remember, oh, I bought this at the Chi Omega show. I bought this at Vintage Market Days at McKinney. If you have strong branding, that includes a well-labeled booth that shows the name of your business. Also, the things you give them when they do make a purchase, things like, putting your name on the bag that you put the merchandise in or on your receipt, having a business card or having a card that offers them some kind of promotion. This is a double whammy, because if you put in a card that will give them a way to purchase from you again and get a discount if they purchase from you again, you're really helping to warm that person up into a person who could be a repeat buyer. And having your consistent branding on all those things will really help increase the likelihood that they will remember your name and your shop and not just remember that you bought it at this show. So make sure that you try to have strong branding and try to have strong connection even after the sale with a person who might become a repeat customer. Rule number 7 is break it down. Before you ever plan your booth and how you're going to set things up, really think about how quickly you can break down the booth. Take it down when it's time to dismantle everything. We spend a long time getting stuff ready and getting it all perfect, and usually have a lot of time before the show to set up. But break down, you're so ready to get out of there. You're so ready to be done and close up shop. And if it takes forever to break down your booth and disassemble everything, it's just such a downer. So it really helps if you can plan ahead from the beginning, things that are easy to take apart and dismantle and kind of put together and make them small so that you can get out of there quickly. It just makes your life better to be done with the show quickly. When it's done, you want to go home and count your money and reorganize everything, and you just don't want to be there forever trying to take everything down. And so my advice is to really do some study of shelves, like what kind of shelving you can use that will be sturdy enough for your merchandise, but not overbuilt, not any stronger or heavier than you really need it to be. And so obviously a lot of people use these grid walls that they can hang up and hang their merchandise on. They're pretty easy to take down, and they store very small once you take them down. I saw several examples of shelves that fold up. If your merchandise is more lightweight, you can use lighter weight shelves. I'll give you one tip that I always used is there are shelves called Ivar from IKEA, because I had usually wood picture frames that were quite heavy when you had a whole shelf full of them, a whole bunch of them. And so these Ivar shelves, I could set up their wood. They broke down easily. They were reconfigurable into lots of different sizes and shapes. And they come in an unfinished version, a raw wood version, so I left mine raw for years, and then when I redesigned my booth to a different color, I painted them. And so you can do that, make them any color you want. I'm sure that I think they also come probably in black and white too if you want them colored. But Ivar shelves are a good option if you have merchandise that is pretty heavy and you need a fairly sturdy shelf, but something you can break down pretty easily. That's a good one. All right, thanks for staying around to the end, those of you who stayed this long, because I have a bonus for you. The bonus is what I call a visual elevator speech. What you really want to try and remember, and think about this when you do a show, we talk a lot, business people talk a lot about your elevator speech, or nowadays it's almost like your tweet. How could you describe your business, what you do, why people should want to do business with you in the length of time you could tell somebody on an elevator? So basically, distill it down to what's really critically important, what you could say in 1 or 2 sentences, what you could say on a short trip on an elevator, or even smaller, what you could say in a tweet. Well, those things are important for your business, but when you're doing a show like this and people are walking by and they're having fun and they're having drinks and they're chatting with their friends, you need your booth to have a visual elevator speech. When somebody walks by, they need to be able to see in just a matter of a second or two who you are, what you do, and why they should care. So figure out how you are sending that message visually to people who walk by. If they have to wait and talk to you to find out what you sell or why they should care, it's already too late. You've probably lost most of them. So get your visual elevator speech ready and make sure that your booth shows that to everyone who comes by. Step back when you're setting up, step back from across the aisle or as far as you can get. Take a picture of it if you need to. See if you are sending the message you need to send to people so that they can understand you and care about you in a very short amount of time and really kind of get what you're all about. So that's my advice to you, my final advice. Make your visual elevator speech, and hopefully you will have a great show. I wish you all the best. I'd love to hear in the comments if you do any of these shows or want to do any of these shows, or are you attending any of them this year? Let me know. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching.